Well, now that the Phillies and Union season's wrapped up, we're just going to go back to the Eagles, which is fine because they're playing really well, right? Right? Oh, they lost to the Commanders, and the Sixers are 500, and the Flyers now losing again? Well, I guess that means I'll just go back to my regular pessimistic self. You're watching Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. As always, I'm your host, Aidan, and I'm joined by my usual panel of Siobhan Nolan. Siobhan, how are you doing?
Despite having no union to talk about, I'm doing pretty good.
And Mike Holden. Mike, how are you doing?
I think you summarized it perfectly. Looking forward to diving into it.
Yeah, we're going to dive right into the Eagles' very disappointing performance on Monday night against the Washington Commanders. As I said in the opener, they lost their first game of the season, 32-21. It was just not a good game at all. The Eagles honestly played all right. I mean, Jalen Hurts put up decent stats, 17 of 26, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Miles Sanders got a lot of late carries, 12 carries for 54 yards. And Devontae Smith, 6 catches for only 39 yards. But he also did get a touchdown. So the offense, it felt weird because the offense just never really got the ball. But when they did, they played pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, that first half, Shane Steichen, I think he ran it with Sanders one time, which you cannot do. Sanders has been one of the best running backs this year, and you just cannot do that. And the passing game was just not doing anything really. A.J. Brown got hurt early, so that kind of seemed like that messed him up for the rest of the game. And it just – Hurts did play a good game. He did what he needed to do, and it was just kind of fluky turnovers. I mean, the Watkins play, and then we're getting to the Goddard play. Those plays, they weren't really, they were turnovers, but at the same time, they can be preventable, and it's something that will be worked on. But, yeah, I think they did not look like an undefeated team at all for this offense in this game.
The one comparison that I heard a lot about this game was the Dallas game last year where they didn't really use Sanders at all, and they went down in a deep hole. Do you think that that's pretty comparable to what happened in this game?
Yeah, I mean, like last year and even the year before that, even I know Sirianni wasn't there, but it's like the same problems that they're just not running the ball. And it's like the same thing every year. They don't run the ball, and it's problematic, but then when they do run the ball, it works, and that's what they did in the second half. Sanders had 1 carry in the first half and then 11 for 50 yards in the second half. So you have to keep running the ball, and they were the best running team last year when they don't have guys like Jordan Howard. They don't really have a big physical running back. I like Trey Sermon. I hope they kind of activate him for the rest of the year. But, yeah, they need to keep it consistent throughout the whole game. Yeah,
it was definitely a very unfortunate situation that they didn't use Sanders till late. I mean, once they did, the offense looked much better than they did in the first half. But the fourth quarter, there was just so much that happened. First of all, the Goddard play, which was a face mask that was not called. He ended up fumbling on the play. Washington scored a touchdown off of that fumble. Just a complete disaster. Then Quez Watkins has a 50-yard catch. After that, it looks like that he's either going to score or the Eagles are in great territory. He ends up fumbling on that play, turns it over. And the Eagles get one more chance to stop Washington, and an unnecessary roughness call is made on Brandon Graham on a play that was also pretty controversial with Heineke kind of sliding, but not really. Mike, what do you think of all these plays?
Yeah, listen, that Brandon Graham play, it was not good, like, at all. I mean, I know it's a tough spot for the ref to make that call. I mean, it's just in that situation, you don't know. I mean, in Graham's eyes, you just can't. You're going full speed, and when you see Heineke kind of taking a knee like that, it's hard to come off. So, you can get mad at Graham, but at the same time, it's just such a tough play, and you can't really get mad at the ref for calling that. But, the missed face mask call on Goddard, you cannot do that as a ref. I know, he got injured from that play, but that face mask is the reason why Goddard even fumbled that ball. I mean, and it's a play that they need to. I mean, the refs, I don't think they've even came out and said they made a mistake, which is kind of concerning. But, yeah, there are 2 plays that just cost them. You hate blaming the refs, but it did cost them in the moment.
Yeah, and one of the really interesting things that has come out about this is both the division between the players and the fans. A lot of the players have said that they just don't really care about the calls because they're already in a deficit at that point anyway. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, at least with the Goddard one, it affected the game. I mean, you lose the fumble and then go right out and the Commanders score, which, I mean, and now we lose Goddard he's on the IR now, and I know that, I mean, you can't. It's an injury. It's it's a freak thing. It happens, but it cost them the fumble, and it's just something that it hurts to watch as a fan. But yeah, and like the Brandon Graham play, it happens. It's going to happen. It's been a problem for the past couple years of roughing the passers. So, but I think that was a good call. But it's like I said, it was a tough play, and for Brandon Graham to make, and even the ref.
Yeah, no, it was definitely very concerning what happened. The fact that, like Mike, that you brought up, that the refs haven't come out and said they were wrong is also very disappointing as a fan and as probably as a player, I'm sure, as well. The other thing about this loss, not only was it on Monday night, not only was it the Eagles' first loss of the season, it was to a division rival. And right now, the NFC East is the best division in football by far, and these standings are so close. The Eagles are 8-1. The Giants are right behind them at 7-2. And even though the Cowboys have struggled a lot, they're still 6-3. And Washington, with that win, is now 5-5 at 500 and has the 7th seed for the wild card. So this is a very tight division. How do you think it's going to shake up now that the Eagles have lost?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about all year about how the Eagles have an easy schedule, but the next 3 games are not going to be easy. You got the Colts, and then you got the Packers, and then you have the Titans. I think it's Packers next week, then the Titans. But those are 3 tough games, and it's gonna come down to if they can actually stop the run. You're playing running backs, Jonathan Taylor next week, playing Derrick Henry, then you got Jones and Dillon for the Packers, and then you still have to play Saquon Barkley twice with the Giants, and they're right behind you. So I'm a little concerned with this run game, but they did add Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, which hopefully that will beef up that interior D-line a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the D-line is definitely a huge concern, but also is now the offense. It seems like the offense at certain points just hasn't really clicked. I mean, some of the games, like when A.J. Brown scoring the 3 touchdowns against the Steelers, was an awesome game. And then other times it just seems like the offense is very stagnant. Mike, how can the Eagles figure out a way to be consistently all the way through the rest of the season?
Yeah, they just have to put everything together. And it's kind of something last year when they were running the ball good, but they couldn't put that passing element of the game together. And it's kind of the same thing this year. They'll have a good running game, but then the passing game will kind of lack a little bit. And they just need to find a way to put that all together and play 4 quarters of football, because they didn't do that last week, and they really haven't done that. Even I know they were undefeated, but they were kind of really only putting up a good first half, or is the other way around, a good first half, bad second half, or a good second half, bad first half. They haven't really put a full game yet. So they need to do that if they really want to just make this season memorable and do something in the playoffs.
Yeah, one of the things we haven't talked about as well so far is how well Jalen Hurts has played. Yes, the Eagles lost, but he still looked very good in this game. 2 touchdowns passing, 1 rushing touchdown, only the 1 interception, which is only his 3rd of the season. He also has 21 combined touchdowns this year. Mike, how has Hurts' play really elevated this team?
Yeah, he's been, was he great last game? No, but he has been good. He might not be leading the MVP anymore, but he's still an MVP candidate, and I think that that's what you can ask for. He's made the improvement. That's what we're asking for in the offseason, for him to make that passing game improvement, and he has, and he's still doing it in the run game. I know the past few weeks he's kind of shied away from the run game a little bit more, but I am liking what I'm seeing, and we're 8-1 for a good reason. He's a big part of that, so I'm happy what I've seen from him this year.
Yeah, I mean, he has played so well. The offenses look great. The defenses also look really good. But this is another one of those games where it feels like Jonathan Gannon was very conservative with the play calling. Not a lot of blitzes, very much having the quarterbacks play back, letting a lot of short passes, letting a lot of runs happen for not a lot of yards, but it just meant that Washington had the ball for so long. The Eagles didn't really get anything going on offense. Mike, how do you look at Gannon's play calling so far this season?
I mean, we were finally starting to praise him a little bit, that he's kind of finally is that aggressive coach and still just mixing in the blitzes and just the coverage that he likes to do so well. But we're calling for blitzes, and he was doing that in the early season. But we saw last game he did not do that. And against a guy like Taylor Heineke, you have to. And with Gannon, sometimes I don't know why he does this against either good or to bad quarterbacks. He just lets them sit in the pocket, and he just lets them. And Terry McLaurin was eating all night. I mean, Darius Slay's been great, but that was definitely Darius Slay's probably worst game as an Eagle. But yeah, Gannon, you got to switch it up, especially the next few weeks. I mean, you're playing Aaron Rodgers in the next week, so you have to just do something different against him for sure.
Yeah, the next game coming up too is before the Packers game is actually the Colts game. This is going to be a very interesting game. The Colts right now are 1-0 with Jeff Saturday as their coach, who was just hired for them. The game Sunday at 1 in Indianapolis, and right now the Eagles are 2-0 against the AFC South this season. Obviously, we talked about Jonathan Taylor. He's a great running back. It's going to be hard for the Eagles to shut him down. You brought up the 2 signings the Eagles have made with Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh at the defensive tackle. Do you think there's any way the Eagles can shut down this rushing game by the Colts?
I mean, they might not be able to shut it down, but they just got to contain it. I mean, you got Matt Ryan as the quarterback, and he's a good veteran quarterback. He's not going to throw for 400 yards anymore. He just doesn't. They don't have that offense in Indianapolis right now, but they do have Jonathan Taylor, and he's going to be the bulk of that offense. And it's going to just come down to stopping him first of all, and then it's going to come down. This is a game that you have to pressure Matt Ryan. You can't give him time. You can't let him sit back in the pocket. You have to bring the blitz, and you have to make him throw the ball instead of just handing it off to Jonathan Taylor all game.
Yeah, so do you guys have any predictions for this game before we wrap up the Eagles?
It's tough to say. I'm a little scared for it, but I think they'll pull it out. It might be like a low-scoring game, 17, 11, 12, 13, something like that. Eagles win.
It'll probably be a close one, I'm guessing, because, I mean, not that 32-21 is super close for the Commanders, but, they did play well, so the performance aspect hasn't really dipped, but I'm gonna say that they win, too.
Yeah, I'm going that they win as well. Hopefully that turns out to be the case. We're now going to jump to the Sixers, who we also mentioned the Open, has not been playing that well. They're 500 right now. Luckily, I got to speak with a very special guest about how the Sixers are playing. Take a look. Wow. All right. The 76ers have gotten off to a pretty horrible start this season. Luckily, I have a former SportsTalk Philadephia host with me today, Josh Abrams, here to talk some Sixers basketball. Josh, how's it feel to be back?
Well, I mean, it's very surreal to be back. I still can't really put it into words, but all in all, it's a really great experience to be back here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here to talk with me through this, sort of my therapy session, I guess. So one of the big complaints among Sixers fans has been the fact that Doc Rivers has not elevated the team to the level that we thought they'd be. What changes do you think Doc Rivers can make to make this team much better than they're at right now?
Well, he is in a little bit of a pickle right now, unfortunately, because he doesn't have arguably, well, you could say his second best player, James Harden. And Embiid is dealing with his own fair share of, you can't even call it injuries, now it's illnesses. So yeah. It's really concerning on that end. So in a way, you don't want to cut Doc Rivers any slack because he certainly doesn't deserve it. But the situation right now is not good with not having your best players available. I think you kind of, when you don't have Embiid and Harden, you have to throw everything that you have at any opponent because it almost feels like you don't want to say the team is too top heavy to the point where it can't survive without the two of them, but you need them eventually down the stretch, obviously.
Yeah, I think one of the key pieces to this Harden injury is the fact that you're now going to be taking D'Anthony Melton off the bench, putting him in as the starting shooting guard. Is there any way that Doc Rivers can adjust this team so that the bench is better than they're at right now? Because without Melton, it just feels like they don't really have a scoring option.
Right, that's where it gets tough without Harden. You need Melton and Maxey on the floor as much as possible, and you really need, I guess, you're starting to rely on guys like Shake Milton, who's been here for a while, but hasn't necessarily lived up to his at least his hype. He wasn't necessarily drafted very high, but you still are waiting for more. You want more potential out of Shake. And then as for the other side, the big guys, I mean, you don't feel very good about having guys like Montrezl Harrell come off the bench. Daniel House has shown a little bit of promise. He has knocked down some big threes and played some good defense, but I don't think it's enough to give you any good feelings down the stretch. It's a little too early to be talking about the trade deadline, but something needs to be done because I don't think this team can survive for much longer.
Yeah, and it also feels like the Sixers aren't in the position right now to blow everything up, considering they just signed 2 huge contracts to Harden. Even though he took what could be considered a pay cut, it really wasn't, because you're still paying him $65 for 2 years, which is a lot for a veteran player. And Embiid's making the cap that you can make for a top NBA player. So if the Sixers were to make a trade, who could they potentially get?
I'm not 100% sure, but there are guys out there, certain veteran guys. Like I'm thinking of guys like someone like Harrison Barnes, or anyone who has some sort of veteran experience or at least winning experience. We need guys on the team that have gone far in the playoffs, because you look at the makeup and the mold of this team. You should not have very much confidence that the team's going to go very far. And Embiid is a guy who hasn't gotten out of the second round. I mean, we obviously know Harden played in the finals one year, but not as the main guy. It's just we need to see more. It's still the whole see it, believe it when you see it type of mindset with this team because they just haven't shown us it.
Yeah, and one of the guys that really hasn't stepped up either is Joel Embiid in playoff situations. He's been great in the regular season, but this year he also just hasn't really looked like himself. With Harden out for a month, what does Embiid have to do to carry this team until Harden comes back or the Sixers decide to make a huge trade?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people immediately want to say that Embiid needs to take more matters into his own hands. I think that would be the case if Harden was on the floor because if you want the offense to succeed, I think you can't have both Embiid and Harden be ball dominant. One of them, the offense needs to run through one guy, and obviously we need Harden to score, but we also want him to do a little bit of everything and facilitate when both him and Joel are on the floor together. In times like this where we don't have James Harden, I think it really should be more of a Tyrese Maxey type of offense where it shouldn't be obviously all him, but we can't have Embiid have the ball in his hands at all times. I think there needs to be more just movement in general and get guys involved like Maxey and Tobias Harris. So I think that's another guy you talk about, getting paid a lot. We need him to start living up to it, which is very much easier said than done, especially with him. But again, times like this when you're not fully healthy, you need it.
Yeah, I will say with the Tobias Harris contract, it definitely feels like the Sixers overpaid him. I think that's something that a lot of fans can agree on. When it comes to Maxey, my biggest concern with him being your main facilitator of the basketball, especially at the point guard position, he's so fast, and sometimes that can be a really good thing as a scorer, but that also means that the offense needs to keep up with him, and it doesn't feel like they can. And it also means that sometimes he's still developing as an experienced player. He can make some dumb mistakes when he is that fast with the ball. So how do you think the offense will have to develop if Maxey is now your lead guy?
I'm really glad you brought that specific point up about Maxey being really fast. It seems like he can outrun everybody, but when you get out in transition and in the fast break, you're most likely running into 1-on-4, 1-on-5 situations, and it's almost like in football where the running back needs to follow his lead blocker and try and get as many yards as possible. You kind of want your teammates to run with you. You want to have an outlet pass on either side. Obviously, if the lane's there and Maxey's able to take it himself, great, because we know he can do it. But like you said, I think there needs to be more involvement from the team in general, not just we focus so much on the high-level, talented guys like Maxey, Embiid, Harden, and even Harris. But I think great teams really get contributions. They get consistent and even-level contributions from everybody, all one through however many the rotation is.
Yeah, so last question. Obviously, the season's still very on. We're only in November. This team could still definitely make the playoffs. They absolutely should, the fact that you now have the play-in tournament and all that. How do you see this season ending up for the Sixers?
I think we're going to get playoff basketball. I don't like that at this stage we're not, at least me personally, I can't confidently say that we won't be playing in the play-in tournament, which means a top 6 seed. If we finish anywhere from 7 to 10, there is a possibility that we don't move on to what would be considered the first round at all. So we really need to finish top 6, and for it to be that low of a floor is kind of embarrassing, but still early enough to turn things around. We really don't want to be a play-in team, but whatever happens, obviously.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hopefully the season ends the way that most Sixers fans want it to end, with a championship run, but it just doesn't feel like that right now. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to go back to the studio now, to the desk. Well, apparently after that interview, Joel Embiid had to be listening because he had the game of his life this week, scoring 59 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and 7 blocks. So hopefully the Sixers season looks up. Another team whose season is looking down at this point is the Philadelphia Flyers. They got off to such a great start and now have decided to look like they did last season, where they have lost all these games by allowing 5 goals. Just the losses that they have been pretty brutal. First of all, they're 2-5 against the Blue Jackets, 1-4 against the Senators. They allowed 5 goals against the Stars and another 5 goals to the Blue Jackets. This has just been a really bad stretch. Is there any way that the Flyers can come out of this?
I mean, I don't think that this is going to be a huge losing streak. I think this is the kind of season where they're going to go winning streak, then losing streak, and just kind of back and forth. But the fact that not only have they lost 4 in a row, but the fact that they have lost by 4 or 5 goals every single time, that's really concerning, especially because they struggled so much with defense. Carter Hart was finally looking like he was getting back to the form that he was a couple years ago, and now it's like, you know, we're having the same old problems that we thought were getting fixed, and it's just really disappointing that it looks like they're not anymore.
Yeah, they're starting to play kind of like how we expected them to play. I mean, we were so surprised in the beginning that they were playing that good, but now it's kind of expected that they're doing this. And one thing I do want to keep seeing is Carter Hart playing well, and it's kind of been a struggle the past few games, but I think he'll pick it up, and I do like the job Tortorella was doing. You know, he's blunt. He puts it how it is, and I think that's what they need. But yeah, hopefully this is not a start of something really bad. I hope they're still competitive like they were in the beginning of the season, but hopefully they can kind of get out of this stretch and just play fun hockey to watch.
Yeah, I think the most noticeable thing about this stretch is the fact that Carter Hart is now allowing goals that he wasn't before, and the offense has played a lot worse, but the defense has just looked bad all season. Is there any way that they can fix this defense before the end of the season?
I'm not too optimistic about it because Carter Hart has shown that when he does have a good defense in front of him, and obviously with any goalie, if you have a good defense in front of you, that helps you and, you know, makes you look better. But Carter Hart is very much a goalie where he can't carry a team on his shoulders for too long, as we've seen. You know, he's still a pretty young guy, and he's still very much not great under that kind of pressure. So when you have a 4-game losing streak, when you have all of those goals allowed, and when you have a defense that's just not helping him out, he is not the kind of player that's built to kind of thrive under that pressure and have that push him to be harder. He can crack, and I really don't want to see Carter Hart crack again because we know how good he can be. But if this defense just doesn't get it together, then, you know, the whole defense is going to just be a mess.
Yeah, the defense was a big reason why they were even competitive in the first few games, and they got to get back to that if they want to be competitive at all, because offense was kind of the struggle, and if both's not working, then you're just not going to be a good team.
Yes, we're now going to check out the Metropolitan standings, and the Flyers were looking pretty solid, and now they are not. They are currently, I believe, 5th in the Metropolitan. Yeah, right now they're 5th, right behind the Rangers by only 4 points out of a playoff spot, but they're also just very much tanking in the standings right now. Is there any way that they can stay at this level, or are they going to finish near the bottom of these standings by the end of the season?
I definitely think they're going to finish near the bottom. I just don't, knowing the Flyers and knowing their problems with consistency, it's not going to be their season. That doesn't necessarily mean that John Tortorella should go. That doesn't mean that there needs to be, you know, a whole hullabaloo about, you know, everyone needs to go and we need to rebuild. But it's just, I think that he's a good person for the job. It just, this season is definitely going to be yet another rebuild season, and I think, you know, we just kind of have to roll with that, and hopefully that they can do the best that they can.
Yeah, it was very disappointing how the Flyers have played, same with the Sixers and Eagles. Hopefully next week will be a bit more optimistic of a show, but now we're going to go to our last segment, Fast Five. We're going to start with our first question. I'm going to toss this out to Mike. After 10 weeks, who is the best team in the NFL?
Yeah, this is a tough one because there's really no outlier. You know, I think there's a few teams, but I think the one that they might not have the best record, but I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs just because Patrick Mahomes is playing at an MVP level again. I think, you know, he's passed Allen. I think Allen had that, but I think Mahomes has passed him. But I think it is the Chiefs. You know, as an Eagles fan, I want to say the Eagles, but after that loss, I think I just have to bump them from 1. So I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs, but it's really competitive.
Yeah, no, I definitely think the Chiefs are up there. There's also another team that you're leaving out. I know the Eagles beat them, but they're the only other one-loss team in the Minnesota Vikings. They've been so good this year, so dominant. Not many people thought they were going to be this good. I will say that I was one of those people, so not to like pat myself in the back or anything, but they've just played up to that level. I think that this will be a very competitive team. We're now going to go to another type of football. Siobhan, the World Cup is coming up. Who do you have as your favorite?
I'm so excited. It's coming up on the 20th. I hate to say it, but I think England can do really well. The Patriot in me wants to say that this is the U.S.'s year because we do have a lot of good players, but Greg Berhalter's team selection leaves a lot to be desired. I think Brazil, Argentina, and England are kind of my three picks of who could win it all. It's looking to be a really interesting competitive group because there's a lot of really young players who are playing in their first World Cup, and then you have guys who are playing in their fourth or fifth World Cups. So it's a really interesting age dynamic. A lot of the greats like Messi, Ronaldo are all coming back. So it's going to be exciting, hopefully, and hopefully the Qatar World Cup will not be as much of a mess as people have been predicting it will be for 4 years.
Yeah. I will say, as an England fan, I'm very excited you made that pick.
Yeah.
So hopefully it plays out the way that people are thinking it will. Hopefully it plays out the way that I want it to as well. We're now going to go to basketball. I have my pick for the top team in the NBA. I'm interested if anyone else has one, but I'm going to start first. I have the Milwaukee Bucks as the best team. I know that they don't have the best record right now in the East. They're just behind the Celtics by half a game, but Giannis Antetokounmpo has been unbelievable as usual. He has 29 points per game, 11.8 rebounds per game, and 5.5 assists. He's just been awesome. We're now going to also go to another basketball in college basketball. This has been very shocking of a season. First of all, you have Villanova that was supposed to be favored in the Big East. They lost a heartbreaker at Temple. It was a game that was so close up until the end, but it definitely leaves a lot of questions about where Kyle Neptune's team is going in his first season as head coach. I'm also looking at Houston right now. They're not a predominantly great team in the conference they play in, but they've been very solid the last couple of years and made a couple Final Four runs. They're 4-0 right now. They haven't really played any competition, but they're going to be playing Oregon on Sunday night, and that would be an awesome game to watch. We're now going to go to our last question. Mike, who do you have as your NFL MVP so far?
Yeah, I guess I kind of spoiled it in my best team, but I think it's Patrick Mahomes. I think before this it was probably Allen, but I think Mahomes. I think he has passed in the past 2 weeks. Just what he's done in the passing game is just, it's not normal for him. I mean, we've seen him do it before, and he's finally starting to do it. And we thought he'd kind of fall off when Hill left, but he's only gotten better.
Yeah, no, he is having a great year. I'm also going to go back to a team that I picked with the Vikings. I think that Justin Jefferson could be up there right now. That catch that he made on Sunday was absolutely ridiculous. One-handed between two defenders. It's one of the best catches in NFL history. And besides that, his stats this year have been really great as well. So I think that he is a good shot of winning MVP, along with possibly Jalen Hurts, as you mentioned, Mike, when we were talking about the Eagles. So hopefully he has a shot as an Eagles fan. But that's all we have for today for Sports Talk Philadelphia. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter, at Sports Talk LTV. We hope that you leave any thoughts, suggestions you have. Thanks so much for tuning in again. Make sure to watch next week.